Hi there everyone, Lars here with another Defending Tolkien installment, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and a little while ago I made a video attacking Amazon's Rings of Power in how it's portraying Galadriel. And while I stand by what I said, this mini-series right here, Defending Tolkien, is all about Tolkien's contributions to fantasy and to authors around the world, and therefore it's meant to be more positive than vitriolic. I'm saving all of my good venom for when the series actually comes out. So, in the spirit of being more positive, I want to forget the Aiel woman that they're trying to pass off as Galadriel, and instead I want to focus on a particular scene that Tolkien wrote and rewrote for Galadriel in the Second Age. I want us to get a good idea of who she is at this time in Middle-earth's history, and showcase the importance of editing and second drafts, something that all of us writers should take to heart. In this video, I will read you all an excerpt from the book The Unfinished Tales, regarding the magical gem, the Eleazar. Now, I understand that the Rings of Power showrunners admitted that they don't have access to the rights necessary to adapt the Silmarillion, the Unfinished Tales, etc. They are stuck in a corner with very few toys to play with. However, even with production rights being what they are, this written and re-edited story about Galadriel and the Eleazar that I'm going to read to you all in just a moment gives us very valuable insights into who Galadriel was during the Second Age. And these valuable insights would be absolutely instrumental in crafting the proper image of who Galadriel is and helping guide fans of The Lord of the Rings from the Second Age into the woman that we get to see in the Third Age. So, let me first give a little bit of book-ended context here. In the First Age, Galadriel was a powerful, wise, but brash, proud young elf who desired her own dominion. Her power and beauty rivaled the mightiest of the ancient Eldar, the highest elves, and she could only grow by leaving Valinor. She left with the Noldor in their rejection of the Valar's neutrality in the face of Morgoth's betrayal, and sought to aid Feanor in retrieving the Silmarils and retaking Middle-earth. Yes, that's a lot of history right there. This younger, battle-hardened Galadriel contrasts directly with the Galadriel of the Third Age. When we meet her in The Lord of the Rings, she is still powerful, wise, and beautiful, but she no longer seeks for dominion and warfare. She will aid Middle-earth with her own people's swords, spears, and bows. That is true, but she understands far better now. Galadriel instead relies more on knowledge, hope, courage, and directing the good deeds of others to bring about Sauron's miraculous end. The most important thing we get to see of her is the rejection of the One Ring. It tempts her with the power to have everything that she ever wanted, to save Middle-earth, to preserve its beauty and magic, and remain away from Valinor where she can have her own dominion. However, unlike the younger Galadriel of the First Age, this older, far wiser woman rejects the easy path. Instead of being a ruler, Galadriel decides to be a servant in a far greater cause. In effect, by making the sacrifice, Galadriel proves herself a far wiser and better leader than Sauron and all of his might and schemes. It is therefore her personal test and the greatest struggle to reject the One Ring and give up the ambitions she's carried for millennia and allow her beautiful creations throughout Middle-earth to pass away as the Age of Men dawns. Galadriel's tale is a very sad and beautiful story. But how exactly do we get from First Age Galadriel to the Third Age Galadriel? Tolkien wrote furiously on this subject just before his death. His son Christopher compiled all of his father's notes on the matter and presented them in the Unfinished Tales. These small excerpts, along with the clarifying notes, prove a remarkable character arc for the Elfen Queen and give us a clearer idea of who she was in the Second Age. There is far more for us to read than just the excerpts revolving around Eleazar within the Unfinished Tale, but this concentrated reading that I'm about to do for you guys will suffice to my purposes within this video. So here we have it within the Unfinished Tales. At least in my copy, on page 260, we have the Eleazar. In unpublished writing, there is little else to be found concerning the history of Celeborn and Galadriel, save for the very rough manuscript of 4 pages titled the Eleazar. Now then, this is kind of neat right here, because the Eleazar is a really cool gem within the books that we don't see in the movie. However, it is referenced within the movies when Galadriel calls Aragorn Eleazar. The reason for him having that name is because of the gem that he is given by Arwen that becomes a sign of hope and a sign of his healing power as King of Gondor. It's a really, really neat theme and a really, really neat symbol that signifies who he is to the people of Gondor when he comes to Minas Tirith. Now then, a little bit of context away, let's get into the story of Galadriel and the beautiful stone, the Eleazar. There are 2 different tellings of this particular meeting where Galadriel is given the magical stone, the Eleazar. The first is where she receives it from Gandalf, and in another where she receives it from Celebrimbor. I am going to read both of them. They're pretty quick and easy right here, and honestly, just reading Tolkien is fantastic. So let's dive into it. There was in Gondolin a jewelsmith named Enardil, the greatest of that craft among the Noldor after the death of Feanor. Enardil loved all green things that grew, and his greatest joy was to see the sunlight through the leaves of the trees. And it came into his heart to make a jewel within, which the clear light of the sun should be imprisoned, but the jewel should be as green as leaves. And he made this thing, and even the Noldor marveled at it. For it is said that those who looked upon this stone saw things that were withered, or burned, healed again, or as they were in the grace of their youth, and that the hands of one who held it brought to all that they touched healing from hurt. This gem Enardil gave to Idril, the king's daughter, and she wore it upon her breast, and so was saved from the burning of Gondolin. And before Idril set sail, she said to Eärendil her son, The Eleazar I leave with thee, for there are grievous hurts to Middle-earth, which thou maybe shalt heal. But to none other shalt thou deliver it. And indeed, at Sirion's haven there were many hurts to heal, both of men and elves, and of beasts that fled thither from the horror of the north. And while Eärendil dwelt there, they were healed and prospered, and all things for a while green and fair. But when Eärendil began his great voyages upon the sea, he wore the Eleazar upon his breast. For amongst all his searchings, the thought was always before him, that he might perhaps find Idril again. And his first memory of Middle-earth was the green stone above her breast, as she sang above his cradle while Gondolin was still in flower. So it was that the Eleazar passed away when Eärendil returned no more to Middle-earth. In ages after, there was again an Eleazar, and of this too things are said, though which is true only those wise could say, who are now gone. For some say that the second was indeed only the first returned, by the grace of the Valar, and that Olorin, who was known in Middle-earth as Mithrandir, or as we shall call him Gandalf, brought it with him out of the west. And at a time Gandalf came to Galadriel, who dwelt now under the trees of Greenwood the Great, and they had a long speech together. For the years of her exile began to lie heavy on the Lady of the Noldor, and she longed for news of her kin, and for the blessed land of her birth, and yet was unwilling to forsake Middle-earth. And when Gandalf had told her many tidings, she sighed and said, I grieve in Middle-earth, for leaves fall and flowers fade, and my heart yearns, remembering trees and grass that do not die. I would have these in my home. And Gandalf said, Would you then have the Eleazar? And Galadriel said, Where now is the stone of Eärendil? And Enardil, who is gone, who made it? Who knows? Said Gandalf. Surely, said Galadriel, they have passed over sea, as almost all fair things beside. And must Middle-earth then fade and perish forever? That is its fate, said Gandalf. Yet for a little while they might be amended, if the Eleazar should return, and for a little until the days of men are come. If, and yet how that could be, said Galadriel, for surely the Valar are now removed, and Middle-earth is far from their thought, and all who cling to it are under a shadow. It is not so, said Gandalf. Their eyes are not dimmed, nor their hearts hardened, in token of which, look upon this! And he held before her the Eleazar, and she took on it, and wondered. And Gandalf said, This I bring you from Yavanna, Use it as you may, and for a while you shall make the land of your dwelling the fairest place in Middle-earth. But it is not for you to possess. You shall hand it on when the time comes, for before you grow weary, and at last forsake Middle-earth, one shall come who is to receive it, and his name shall be that of the stone. Eleazar he shall be called. So that is the first draft that Tolkien wrote, and there's some really neat things in here that we can see as kind of a through line between the Second Age and the Third Age, where, once again, Galadriel is not meant to possess dominion in Middle-earth, but instead she is a caretaker, she is a healer, she is someone who gives knowledge and help to those who need it, and so she will pass on the Eleazar when the time comes, and relinquish her hold of Lothlorien when the time comes for the Age of Men to dawn. However, Tolkien rewrote this scene with very different characters, and it reads as follows. Long ago, ere Sauron deluded the smiths of Eregion, Galadriel came there, and she said to Celebrimbor, the chief of the elven smiths, I am grieved in Middle-earth, for leaves fall and flowers fade that I have loved, so that the land of my dwelling is filled with regret that no spring can redress. How otherwise can it be for the Eldar, if they cling to Middle-earth? Said Celebrimbor. Will you then pass over sea? Nay, she said. Angrod is gone, and Egnor is gone, and Felagund is no more. Of Finarfin's children, I am the last, but my heart is still proud. What wrong did the golden house of Finarfin do that I should ask the pardon of the Valar, or be content with an isle in the sea, whose native land was Aman the Blessed? Here I am mightier. What would you then? Said Celebrimbor. I would have trees and grass about me that do not die, here in the land that is mine, she answered. What has become of the skill of the Eldar? And Celebrimbor said, Where now is the stone of Irindil, and Enadril, who made it, is gone. They have passed over the sea, said Galadriel, with almost all fair things. But must then Middle-earth fade and perish forever? That is its fate, I deem, said Celebrimbor. But you know that I love you, though you turn to Celeborn of the trees. And for that love I will do what I can, if haply by my art your grief can be lessened. But he did not say to Galadriel that he himself was of Gondolin long ago, and a friend of Enadril, though his friend in most things outrivaled him. Yet if Enadril had not been there, Celebrimbor would have been renowned. Therefore he took thought, and began a long, delicate labor. And so for Galadriel he made the greatest of his works, save the 3 rings only. And it is said that more subtle and clear was the green gem that he made than that of Enadril, and yet its light had less power. For whereas that of Enadril was lit by the sun in its youth, already many years had passed ere Celebrimbor began his work, and nowhere in Middle-earth was the light as clear as it had been. For though Morgoth had been thrust out into the void and could not enter again, his far shadow lay upon it. Radiant nonetheless was the Eleazar of Celebrimbor, and he set within it a great brooch of silver in the likeness of an eagle rising upon outspread wings. Wielding the Eleazar, all things grew fair about Galadriel, until the coming of the shadow to the forest. But afterwards, when Nenya, chief of the 3, was sent to her by Celebrimbor, she needed it, as she thought, no more, and she gave it to Celebrian, her daughter, and so it came to Arwen, and to Aragorn, who was called Eleazar. There you have it, a glimpse into Galadriel of the Second Age, a leader who is desperate to preserve the beauty of Middle-earth, but is holding on to her ambitions of dominion and freedom from Valinor. This is the perfect middle point for her character, and I love it. Now, with there being 2 variations of this story, it's left up to the reader to decide which version is your favorite. Personally, I like the second excerpt because it highlights Galadriel's personality really well, and it gives great credit to Celebrimbor. I also like the guy's brazenness to tell an elf far older than him that he loves her, even though she's married to Celeborn. And he does fulfill her wish to preserve the lands that she loves through the great magic of the Eleazar. So you go, man! At least you confessed before you were murdered by Sauron. I also prefer that the great gem is passed from mother to daughter until Arwen gives it to Aragorn as a token of her faith in him and becomes a symbol of hope. Having Gandalf deliver it to Galadriel according to a far mapped out plan from the Valar might fall well in line with what Manve and Mondos would do, but it feels like it relieves the main characters in The Lord of the Rings of some of that crucial autonomy that makes their quest so poignant. Now, what can we as novice writers learn from all of this? For one, take heart. Even Tolkien had to explore his characters over many years. He had to write and rewrite all of his ideas, looking for the best option that elevated the characters, the world, and the themes he loved so much. Editing is a nasty, time-consuming process, but it is absolutely essential in creating the best book possible. Another thing to note is that Tolkien kept all his old ideas. He didn't just throw out one draft and move on to the next. This is very important so that way you can make comparisons that help you select and refine your best ideas. I myself keep every draft of every story and even the drafts that are absolute garbage. Why? Because it is still instructional and can help me understand how my characters are growing, and I can then keep that growth consistent in later drafts, so that way nothing feels like it's just swinging out of left field. Tolkien understood that the process to make the best story is a very long and arduous one. It's not just running with the initial inspiration, but carefully writing and rewriting. Again, it is messy, but it is oh so worth it. And thanks to Tolkien's efforts, we are not left hanging on fanfiction speculations regarding beloved characters. Instead, we actually understand who they are. There you have it, a glimpse into who Galadriel was during the Second Age and what we as writers can learn from all of it. If you want more about Galadriel during that tumultuous age of Middle-earth, check out the Unfinished Tales and other works compiled by Christopher Tolkien. And if you'd like more writing advice, please check out our other videos here on YouTube and our podcast episodes found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. We have writing exercises on our Pinterest page, and we would love for you to join our growing community of novice writers. Please check out all of that in the description below and links to even more. Thank you for joining us on this adventure through Middle-earth and writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.